Hi guys, welcome back. It's me, Mrs. Vogel. Glad you could join me today for Ruby Holler. Just a very quick recap of what we read the other day. We started with Z's report. Now remember, Z's the guy that's working with Mr. Trepid, but we don't know a whole lot about him yet, do we? We do know that Mr. Trepid's putting him on a little job over in Ruby Holler where he's asking him to find particular stones, piles of stones, and Mr. Trepid lies and says, oh, it's about an oil source, but we all know what he's really going to do, don't we? Okay, and then we read the chapter called Bearings, and that's where Sari and Dallas were kind of talking about, oh, it's a bummer we forgot the compass, but let's talk and let's let time pass us a little bit. And so she asked Dallas to explain about some of the people he's been with. And, it was hard for Dallas to talk about, but he started, and poor Sari was just beside herself hearing all these awful, awful stories. Then we read the chapter Stiff, and that's, Tiller and Florida had been paddling all day the day before. So this morning they're feeling a little stiff and just don't really have what's in them to do the same thing today. So they decided they're going to take it slow and easy. And then Tiller asks Florida to tell him a little bit more about some of these crazy people that she's lived with. So she shares her story. It's kind of interesting that Tiller and Sari are both getting a little dip into the lives of Florida and Dallas right now, huh? And then we read the chapter A Long Chain where Dallas asks Sari about the pictures at their house where everybody kind of looks the same. And she talks about how that's everybody in her family and everybody in Tiller's family. And they kind of notice that, hey, they all kind of have a similar look. It's a long chain of people, isn't it? So today we're going to start with chapter 37 called Word Pictures. Florida and Tiller were letting the swift current carry them along. Florida had just finished telling Tiller about the Hoppers and Cranbaps and Bergertons when Tiller made an odd sound as if he were in pain. "What's the matter? You feeling poorly?" She turned around and saw him with his chin bent against his chest. "I'm feeling like I want to strangle those boys and those Hoppers and Cranbips and those Bergerton boys." "Don't you go feeling poorly over it? You forget the worst bits after a while. Sometimes Dallas and I pretend it happened to somebody else. And you know what Dallas says? He says that it don't mean nothing. That someday we're going to live in a glorious place and we'll get married to real nice people and we'll each have 20 kids of our own." 20. Well, maybe more. "And we won't ever let anybody be mean to those kids, not ever. And our kids will grow up and get married and have bunches of kids of their own, and they'll treat their kids good, and it'll go on and on like that forever and ever." Florida liked that picture. Maybe it was good that Dallas was dreamy, she thought, because whenever she was feeling as if everything was dark and scary and putrid, Dallas would paint word pictures that would fly into her mind and scatter the dark and scary things. When they'd been locked in the toothless lunatic cellar, Dallas had talked all night long about how they would live in a clean place someday. Up in the woods, maybe, and all around would be beautiful trees and clean rivers, and the only people nearby would be good ones, nice ones, no mean ones allowed. And on he went all through the night, making word pictures. Chapter 38, Surveying. Z had made his way down into Ruby Holler and was sitting on Tiller and Sari's porch. Sweat dripped from his face as he leaned back against the shaded wall. That Trepid fellow had gone a little too far this time. Z didn't for 1 minute believe that Trepid wanted to know where Tiller and Sari might have found oil. He was up to something else, and Z had a pretty good idea what it was. Z could have refused Trepid's request right off the bat, but he figured that Trepid would just find someone else to do his dirty work, and that would not be good. At least this way, Z could stall Trepid until he figured out what to do. Z circled the cabin, glancing in the windows. Then he stood and looked around the yard. He spotted a pile of stones near the well and another pile beside the porch steps. There were stones by the barn path and a big gray stone near the fir tree. From his pocket, he took the pencil and paper that he'd brought with him. He drew a square for the cabin and X's around it where the stones were. He hoped he found lots of stones. Lots and lots and lots of them. Chapter 39, The Worrywarts. Dallas and Sari had stopped for a day in a scrubby clearing. They were penned in by dense trees, and the ground was rocky, but it was the best place they could find to set up camp. They'd eaten cold beans and were starting to ignore their thirst. Sari had settled herself on a flat stone and had pulled out her block of wood and her whittling knife when Dallas said, "Sari, I don't get it. I mean, that you'd want to go someplace else where you don't have your own bed that you're used to, and that you don't have good food that you always make, and there's all these bugs." And Sari sniffled. "Well, if we ever do go, to Kangadoon, I'm sure it'll be worth the trip." "If we go to Kangadoon? If? I mean, when we go. I don't know why I said if." Dallas stared at Sari, who looked as if she might cry, and that shocked him. He couldn't imagine her crying, but trying to picture him made him remember a time when Mrs. Trippett had grabbed a hold of Florida and shook her. "Why don't you ever cry?" Mrs. Trippett had demanded. And Florida replied, "'Cause I don't putrid want to." But Florida did cry sometimes. She'd cried at the Hoppers, and at the Crambeps, and the Bergertons, and at the creepy Dreep's place. Dallas hadn't cried at all those places. He didn't know why he hadn't. Maybe it was because Florida was crying enough for the two of them, or because he wanted to cheer her up. Dallas had cried after Joey had died, but no one saw him cry except for Florida. And sometimes at night, at the home, he cried. And if Florida heard him, she would sneak into the closet and lift that cardboard flap and say, "Don't think about it, Dallas. It will go away." Out in the woods now with Sari, Dallas pulled out of his pocket his own block of wood and studied it. He'd already chipped at one end, but he hadn't figured out what was inside yet. "What's that you're carving?" "I'm not sure yet. Just have to see what comes out. How about yours?" "No idea." "Yours?" "I don't have any idea. Maybe another robin? Oh, you don't have to find a bird inside yours. Maybe there's something else inside yours." "Well, like what?" "I don't know. Could be anything at all." "It's probably a slug or a slimy worm." He felt odd, as if he were talking like Florida. "Or a putrid rat thing." It made him laugh to talk like Florida. "You know what I was just thinking? I was remembering a time when Taylor and I were out walking in the holler. This was a long time ago, before our kids were even born. And there, in the middle of the path, was a perfect piece of wood. And we both reached for it." "Oh, did you fight over it? You pull it back and forth?" "Not exactly. I mean, not the way you're thinking. We stayed there a few minutes, bent over, both of us touching that wood. And I was thinking, why doesn't he let go and let me have it? If he loves me, he'll let me have it. Taylor's probably thinking the same thing. If she loves me, she'll let me have it." Sari put one finger across her lips and tapped softly as if she were coaxing more words out of her mouth. "Finally, I said that I thought there was a perfect bird inside that piece of wood. I could see it in my mind. That bird that was nestled in that wood waiting for me to set it free." Dallas examined his piece of wood in his hands, wondering why he couldn't see what was inside. "And Taylor said that he could see the perfect boat in that piece of wood. A perfect boat just waiting to be let loose." "So which was it? A bird or a boat? Who won?" "Oh, he gave in first. He said, "You have it," and I snatched it up, and I was so happy. And on we walked, and as we walked, I started to feel bad. I was trying to picture myself, taking the first slivers off this perfect piece of wood. What if I ruined it? What if there was no perfect bird inside? So I told Taylor, "Here, you have it." Did he take it? Oh, he took it so fast I couldn't even have time to blink. And he made the perfect boat out of that piece of wood. Now, for days and days I saw him holding that piece of wood, turning it around and around. He'd get out his knife, but he just couldn't seem to take the first cut. Do you know what he did? He placed that piece of wood on our dresser and he said, "Sari, I'm putting this here for a while. It'll belong to both of us. Whoever wants to get started on it can do it." Huh, so you grabbed it, right? Oh, I wanted to. I could hardly contain myself. I'd go in that bedroom and I'd touch that piece of wood. But I just could not put my knife to it. And then when I wasn't in there, I'd be worrying that he was in there getting started on it. You two sure are weird. Everybody's a little weird, Dallas. So, who finally got the wood? It's still there, right on our dresser. A piece of wood with who knows what inside. Dallas held his block of wood to his ear, as if maybe he could hear what was inside. "Sari, are we lost?" "Lost? Us? Shoot, we're on this scrubby patch of dirt on the hillside. Maybe we don't know exactly where this hillside is, but I'm sure we'll be fine, just fine." She reached up to touch her yellow scarf as if maybe it'd bring him luck. "Sari, did you ever wonder if Tiller might get used to being on his own?" Sari flashed him a worried look. I was thinking about that a little earlier. You can read my mind. I was thinking how maybe we'd get used to this hiking and maybe I'd stop thinking about the Holler or Taylor. And then I felt bad, like, what if Taylor forgot about thinking about me? Oh, yeah. And what if Florida gets used to that traveling on the river and doesn't want to come back? And maybe she don't want to be tagging me to tag along. Listen to us, a couple of worry-warts. Yeah, a couple stupid worry-warts. Next chapter is 40, Babies in a Box. Tiller and Florida had traveled the length of Hidden River and had spent the last 2 hours portaging into the Gucci River. "It's so beastly hot, and I thought you said portaging would be easy. It isn't easy. Look how long it took us, lugging in all our stuff, all this boat and up the bank and over these rocks and then dragging that heavy boat up the bank and why we bring so much stuff. Every time we portage, we're going to have to lug all this crud." He eyed the dark storm clouds in the distance. "We'd better get that tent up or we're going to get soaked tonight. Smell that. It's a real goose drowner that's coming our way." Later, as the storm clouds broke above them, they sat under the canopy of the tent while the remains of their fire steamed and fizzled. Tiller was carving a fishing boat, and Florida was staring at her piece of wood. "Look what a mess I've made of this. I don't know what the cruddy crud this is." "You don't have to know when you start out. Just see what comes out. Sometimes you have to sneak up on it, pretend you're just moving your hand, your knife, and you don't think you're making anything. Then all of a sudden you look down quick, and sometimes you can tell right then. But still you pretend you don't know because you don't want what's inside to curl up tighter and refuse to come out. You want to be gentle with it." Florida closed her eyes, rolled the wood around in her hands, and then she opened her eyes quickly and stared down at the wood. Nothing. "Whoa! Did you see that lightning? Are we supposed to be out here when that stuff is crashing around us? What if it hits a tree and the tree falls on us and conks us dead?" "I guess someone will find our smashed up bodies someday." "Taylor, you ever seen a dead person? I mean a real dead person, not a picture of one." Tiller thought about his father, lying cold on his bed and his mother in her coffin, Thought about his two best friends who died last year. Yes, I've seen a few. Have you ever seen a dead person? Yep. And who was that? Boy, in our orphanage place, Dallas couldn't save him. What? So she told him about Joey and his fever and about Dallas watching over him and Joey saying, "Who am I? Who am I?" and Dallas trying to get him to breathe again. That's terrible. Where were the Trepids? They were there. Mr. Trepid was crying and Mrs. Trepid was yelling at him, and terrible, terrible. You know what? Dallas didn't talk. I mean, he didn't say a single word for a whole month after that. What about you? How did you feel? I felt like it's probably going to be me who died next. And so I wrote my name on my arm in red ink, so even if I was delirious with a fever, I'd know who I was. And I told Dallas that even if he couldn't get to me to breathe again, it wouldn't be his fault. If I didn't breathe again, it would probably be because I didn't have any room left for air. Tiller poked at the damp wood and ashes. Florida, you mind if I ask you something? If it's nosy, you just ignore it. Like what? I was thinking about your name, Florida. It's a mighty nice name. You probably don't have any idea how you got it, do you? I only know what those putrid Trepids told us. And what was that? They told us we were in a box on their porch, little babies, both of us in the same box, and there wasn't any note or anything. We were wrapped up in a clean white blanket, and the box was lined with papers. Well, not papers exactly, but pamphlets. You know, like the kind you see people that go on trips and stuff. Ooh, like tourist pamphlets and sort of thing. That's right. And I was lying on one that said "Fly to Florida," and Dallas was lying on one that said "Destination Dallas." And so they gave us those names. I was the Florida baby, and Dallas was the Dallas baby. I wonder why those things were in the bottom of that box. You ever wonder that? You know what? I never did wonder that, not until you just said it. Our mother probably just found an old box that had stuff in it, and she didn't pay it much attention. She probably just wrapped us up in the clean white blanket and put us inside. Maybe she wrote a note about how awful she felt having to give us up, and on that note was our real names, but maybe the wind blew that note away, you think? Could be. How about your last name, Carter, is it? How'd you get that name? On the side of the box, it said Carter's Produce. Nah, well, Florida Carter is a lot better than Florida Produce. Or Florida Box. Tiller touched the piece of wood Florida had been whittling away. You see what's happening there? You've been talking and carving and paying it no attention, and now look there. Florida stared down at it. What do you think it is? Some curly-headed thing? I don't know. But I bet if you keep paying it no attention, it'll come out. Well, that's just what I'm going to do. Pay it no attention whatsoever. All right, guys, so we read quite a few chapters today. Let's recap very quickly. I'll ask you a few questions, but word pictures. Do you guys ever make word pictures, like put yourself in like a different place? You know, like when you're cleaning your room, that's not very fun, is it? Do you ever make up word pictures of things you might be doing other than cleaning a room? Kind of like what Dallas does, where he thinks he's a pirate searching for treasure in his room, maybe when he's cleaning it, you know, something like that. Do you ever do that? I know I like to put myself in different places sometimes, so that's kind of an adult thing to do too, I think. Oh, I'm not going to adult today. I'm going to play, pretend, right? Make word pictures. So we also read about serving. Now, this is a little interesting. What do you think that Z is going to do here? Use the clues that you have from this story, but what do you think he's going to do? Do you think he is going to break into the house? Do you think he's going to search for all these rocks and see what might be lying beneath them? What do you think? Do you think he's a good guy or a bad guy? Do you think he's going to do this for Mr. Trepid, even though he's kind of making us feel like he's not? What do you think's going to happen next? Worry warts. How many of you worry sometimes? I think we all do sometimes, right? I love the word worry warts. I think it's a great word. But Dallas calls themselves worrywarts because they're thinking about all these things that they really have no control over right now, right? Do you think they should be worried? Do you think they should be worried that Florida and Tiller might not miss them? I don't think so either, guys. We also read the chapter Babies in a Box, and I want to talk about that one particularly. Could you imagine, have you ever seen something along the side of the road or next to a building, maybe a box or something else a little bit maybe off, not quite where it's supposed to be? Do you ever wonder if there's something cool inside of it? Well, I know I have. When I'm driving down the highway or the interstate sometimes and there's things along the road, part of me wants to pick up the trash, but the other part's like, ooh, I wonder what's inside that box or that bag that's sitting out there. Or a cooler if you see a weird, because someone's cooler fell off the back of their truck or something. But I have another question. What do you think those pamphlets, do you think they were meant to mean anything? Do you think that Florida and Dallas's mom perhaps worked somewhere where those pamphlets would have been? Do you think that their mom found it in a garbage can and just picked it up and put the babies in there? Are there any clues that help you think that way? Well, I can't wait to start reading tomorrow. I hope you all will join me. Thanks for joining me. See you tomorrow. Bye.